Right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 2021 IAB South Africa Online Audience Measurement Tender Workshop. Hi, Joe. Welcome. We're thrilled to have you here today. We do have a long list of registrations, and I see some of you have not yet been able to join, but this workshop is being recorded, and we'll share the link and the presentation afterwards. Thank you so much again for joining. And as most of you know, the IAB in South Africa is really here to help empower the media and marketing industries to thrive in a digital economy. We're a part of a global office suite in 47 countries around the world. But as Imran will share in the context portion of our presentation today, I think South Africa has some unique offerings, which we're proud to continue in this conversation today. For those of you who don't know, just a little bit about the IAB. As I mentioned, we're here to empower the media and marketing industries to thrive in a digital economy. That is our global vision, and for which we all strive towards. Our membership is comprised of leading media companies, brands, agencies and technology firms, of which we call the Big Tent. What this allows us to do as per the Future of Measurement Committee, and thank you to those, hi Ariel, who are joining us today and have been part of putting this together. It allows us to solve problems across all areas of the digital media and marketing ecosystem, and not just from one point of view. So around the table and as part of our committee, we have agencies, both media, creative, digital and specialist. We have online publishers, brands, technology specialists and platforms. So a huge thank you to our volunteers who help drive the IAB forward. And really the IAB is responsible for enabling excellence in digital marketing, focusing on identifying and targeting audiences, of which this project is a huge portion, delivering and optimizing campaigns to these audiences, and the innovation and selling of such activities. We are a non-profit, non-government trade field group, and we field critical research on interactive advertising, while also educating brands, agencies, publishers, and the wider business community on the importance of digital marketing. And I think, as we'll see from Imran's presentation today and the work that the committee has done to date, that this project very much ticks all those boxes. So thank you again for everyone who is here today. We are all here actually today because we know that there is a need for a standardized measurement currency across all stakeholders across the South African online industry, supply chain, to value inventory and audiences within media channels. So our agenda today is really to address just that. My intro is over, and I'll do a welcome in a short bit. We'll then have Imran take us through the context for today's RFI, which is really the background to the measurement tender, a look at the overview and evaluation criteria, and then the bulk of today's session, really at least 30 more minutes, will be on the Q&As. Thank you to those of you, the companies that have pre-submitted the questions. We have prepared the answers and we'll share them with you today. Of course, we'll also be taking additional questions and hope to cover as many of those as possible together here. We do ask that because the upfront portion, the process overview and the background context is quite short, and we just ask that maybe we listen to Imran and then either post your questions in the chat or wait for the Q&A for us to answer the questions there, because some of your questions might be answered in Imran's presentation or may have already been covered in the prep questions that Imran will take us through towards the end of the workshop. Other than that, there's no more hygiene really in terms of the workshop. Please use the chat to ask your questions, and we look forward to a very exciting workshop with you today. So thank you. Just a note again that this is being recorded, and the link and this presentation will be made available to you after the session. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Imran Rajab. Imran is the GM of MTN Global. He has also been on the IAB South Africa Measurement Council for quite a few years, and then was nominated and elected to lead the Future of Measurement Committee for the IAB. You would have seen the press covered on that over the last year and a half. And has then subsequently been tasked to lead this project. So a huge thank you to you, Imran, and over to you.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Paula, and good morning, everyone. Thanks once again for joining us this morning. It's been a long road for us to get to this point. I think for those of you who have been watching our developments, it's almost exactly a year later, actually. So we thought it would be wise to sort of recap some of the background and context on this work stream and this project, just so that there's some of the histories is created. And I think particularly for those who are less aware of where we've come from and where we'd like to go to, I think it's quite useful. If you go to the next slide, Paula. To start off with, I think it's important for us to sort of have an acknowledgement and appreciation for what measurement means for the IAB globally. This is something that we've taken from a document that was prepared by the IAB at a global level that talks to some of the different facets of measurement. And I think the important thing to note here is that measurement means a lot of different things, even within the digital environment. Of course, beyond that means even more things, but within the digital environment, there are lots of different, aspects of measurement that the IAB believes are important and should be covered in some way or another. If you just build the slide and go to the next slide, Paula, I think the important thing to note with regards to the scope for what we're talking about today, it really is on the first two pillars within the facets that on the slide here. So really around digital media consumption and audience measurement. So we're talking about what is being consumed, what websites are being visited, how frequently are they being visited, over what period of time, what sort of content is being consumed, that sort of information, and then audience measurement. So who is actually doing the consuming, and audience profile around the audiences that are consuming this content, whether that be demographic, psychographic, etc. So I think it's an important clarification, because it's not to say that the other areas of measurement are sort of not a focus or not important. They certainly are. And particularly for us as the IAB locally, they will just be delivered through a different means or through a different vehicle. This tender and this sort of project is really focused on the first two pillars. On the next slide, then, I think once we've now understood the background in terms of measurement as it stands globally for the IAB. Oh, sorry, Paul, if you could just go back one. Yeah, there we go. It's also then useful to understand where we've come from locally. And I think the one thing to note, particularly for those who sort of don't have the history of this, is we actually come from quite a unique background. Like Paula mentioned, we're one of the few countries in the world to actually have a relatively stable and respected measurement currency for digital audiences. It's not something that is relatively common across the globe, and certainly in terms of our colleagues from an IB perspective, we're one of only a few countries that has something like this. So we come from a background and a history that I think is already there's a solid foundation that's been built. The realities, though, are that as time goes on, I mean, changes in lots of different things mean that the way we deliver on this measurement scope and the way we deliver this currency needs to evolve. So particularly, I would say between the last tender and now, of course, these things sort of are ongoing, but rapid changes in media consumption and the emergence of new digital channels that are being consumed quite prevalently. Things like changes in measurement realities. I think we're all quite aware with some of the technology changes as well. New devices, the fact that deprecation of third-party cookies. These are all the things that have, I think, put some pressure on the currency in its current form, and said to us as the IB locally that there's a need for us to evolve how we're looking at this going forward. And then alongside those developments, there's also been a call from within the industry for more functionality, more use cases, broader coverage as well. And I think that's really the context and the stimulus for where we are today, really. We started off with the establishment of the Future of Measurement Committee, and I'm joined by some of my committee colleagues on the call today. And the establishment of the committee was really to help us to navigate everything I explained on the previous slide. So how do we as the IAB see our role in delivering measurement solutions evolving based on what we understand, and helping us to get a very good understanding of the needs of the industry, so that going forward into this tender process, we're sure that we are meeting those needs. So the establishment of the committee was around, like I said, around this time last year. I think it was August, September last year. We then also ran a survey which ran between December and January 2020, 2021. So we've had some time to evaluate, analyze those results, and really create a a view of a tender that we believe is going to meet the needs of the industry based on the current realities. And where we've then landed on the objectives of the tender. So I think this is important to note to sort of prospective tenderers, because this is really what we're trying to deliver, and we've crystallized it into these 4 points. So firstly, to provide data that is the go-to source for understanding the digital audience landscape in South Africa. And I think we'll talk about this in some of the Q&A a little bit later, but really, this is what we mean when we call it a currency. We're talking about a universally agreed on source of information or source of data across industry stakeholders. The second is then to certify audiences that are available on publisher platforms. The third would be to demonstrate the value and incremental exposure opportunities that are available within our local publisher landscape. And we know we've got quite a strong local publisher landscape, and thereby to increase the share of advertising, sponsorship, and marketing spend directed at our local publisher landscape. So that's really, the objectives of us going here. So that's some of the background. I'm going to spend really just a few minutes recapping the tender process and spend a little bit of time on the evaluation criteria. Now, all of this information is in the brief, but I think it's just some important context and background for the purposes of our discussion today. In terms of the process, so as you would all be aware, the measurement tender was published towards the end of September. We're today sitting in our tender debrief workshop. From here, some of the critical milestones are on the slide. So RFI submission deadline is on the 11th of November. The RFP process will then last us, between sort of early December this year and go into Q1 of next year. The reason why it's such a sort of extended process is because we've taken into account the fact that there is a Christmas break, and people are going to be away in between, and we don't want to put sort of undue pressure on anyone. So the process is sort of staggered in a way. We will be confirming the short list of candidates that will go from RFI through to RFP before the end of the year, and then there'll be some time before written submissions will be due in the new year, and then tag testing and presentations will happen thereafter, following which we'll of course have a final selection and contracting by the early April next year. These are the indicative dates that we've worked on, of course, may be subject to change based on how things play out going forward. So that's the process. In terms of how we'll be doing the evaluation, so there is a sort of two-step process in evaluation that we'll be following with two different groups of people. The first is going to be our Future of Measurement Tender Subcommittee. So there's a subset of the full Future of Measurement Committee that's going to be involved in actually evaluating the RFI submissions and evaluating the RFP submissions. I've included, I'm not going to go through everybody's names now, I've included the full list of people that are included in that tender subcommittee on the left-hand side. And then what we've also done is made sure that we include, a tender advisory board as a sort of second check as well, which consists of, some of the IAB council leads as well as some of the IAB board members. And we feel that between these two, boards of evaluation, we've got a very well-represented group of people from across the stakeholder environment that we serve as the IAB. So those are the two different groups of people that will be involved in the evaluation and the final decision-making process within the tender. Then just to touch on evaluation in a little bit of detail, like I said, this information is in a lot more detail in the brief itself, but I thought it would be wise to just touch on it now as well. So overall, RFPs will be scored according to the criteria that you see on the left-hand side of the slide. So company profile and creds counting for 5%, triple BE 10%, the technical portion of the submission 45%, and then pricing 40%. And you can see that 45% weighting on technical submission is then broken down further on the right-hand side of this chart. So we've broken down the technical requirements of the scope, quite granularly. One, to assist us with, being able to measure and score across all of these different aspects, but also to help us understand sort of really distinctly the ability to deliver across all of these different categories or buckets. So we start off with web traffic measurement, which is really focusing on the measures and the metrics with regards to traffic measurement, unique users, unique browsers, etc. Then we go into audience measurement, which is all about the like I said, the profiles of the audiences that we would be collecting data on. So demographics, psychographics, etc. There's a portion here around technology, which is really all around sort of understanding the technology that a potential tenderer would be using to collect data or to, present this data visually. Also, integration opportunities with this technology. Channel presence is quite important. I mentioned previously, the fact that one of the, stimuli for this is the emergence of new and different channels from a digital perspective that are being consumed, and presence across those channels is important. I've mentioned integration. Support and training then I think is self-explanatory, and also consists of 10%. Marketing is quite important, and we definitely do see the potential tenderers playing a role in promoting the provision of these services to the industry at large. Migration. So of course, like I said, we've got a strong history of this collecting this data in the past, and we want to make sure that that is maintained and retained as much as possible going into any potential new solutions. Data ownership also obviously being increasingly an important topic going forward, and that is 5%. And then some views on the future of measurement. So how are potential tenderers set up to address some of the future challenges that we foresee, and that would be 5% as well. So that gives you some sense of how the scoring will happen, and where the weighting lies with regards to the scoring in terms of how the evaluation committees will be looking at the RFP submissions. Yeah, and that's it really in terms of the background and context. So like Paula mentioned, we had some pre-submitted questions for that came through from some of you in preparation for the session today. We've drafted some answers to these questions, which we'll go through now, and then the idea will be that we'll open up the floor for discussion, clarification, or if there are any further questions as well.
Thanks, Imran. Yes, so we'll go through the questions, and then I think if you can use, I don't know if everyone knows where the raise hand function is. Otherwise, just turn your screen on, and we'll take that as the cue to kind of for you to present your question. Thank you.
Awesome. So I'm going to go through the questions sort of in detail now. So the first question that we got was specifically with regards to the membership trends table that was included in the brief. So you outlined the number of members totaling 127, and there are 180 tagged sites. For clarification, is the current number of members 127, of which some own more than one site? Quite a simple answer to this one. Yes, many of the publishers that we are tracking today own more than one site, so that results in a higher number of tagged sites versus total members. The second question then was with regards to task 2, so the methodology for audience measurement. And here the question is, can I clarify if these are already captured in the PAMS data set with regards to reference to the wide spectrum of access technologies or devices that users would be accessing websites with, or do you believe a separate reference data set is required for this? More generally, on audience measurement, is there an acceptance within the committee that building an appropriate size panel may need to occur during the contract period? So I think here the idea is to understand that the way that we're currently set up is that we collect data through the use of an on-page, on-site JavaScript tag. That tag then captures, it's triggered every time a user visits the pages of our sites where the tag is appearing on, and that tag captures all of the visitor information and traffic information, of course. In addition to that, there are surveys that are triggered on publisher sites where the tags are placed as well. And these surveys are then used to establish the audience profiles of the people visiting the site. So that data from those surveys is then weighted back to the internet population based on PAMS, and is how we then reflect the data in the online dashboard from an audience profile perspective. The reality is that we are, of course, open to exploring the establishment of a standalone panel for the measurement services going forward as well.
Imran, I don't know would you like to go through all the questions and answers first, and then we can come back if anyone wants some detail?
I think we can do that, yeah. I think
perfect.
that's fine. The third question was then on pricing. Can you clarify if you only require the pricing model and annual fees to subscribers? You also reference an indication of costs. Is this the total cost for us to deliver the project against each of the criteria, web traffic measurement, audience measurement, etc., or just how we would price subscriptions to members and non-members? So here, what we require is a view of the total cost for provision of all of the services to each member. So what we'd be like to have a sight of is, what is this going to cost on a member by member basis? And then beyond this, like I said, we've broken down and bucketed the services or the scope of the sort of deliverable quite clearly. And what we'd like to have a view of is how the cost is broken down against those individual criteria as well. I think it just will be helpful in the sort of the evaluation and understanding, how the costs are coming together, as well as any potential conversations that then happen thereafter. The fourth question was on billing and contracts. So you referenced that there will be a contract with the IAB South Africa, and then each member will be billed directly with separate contracts. Can you outline the type of contract the successful vendor will have with the IAB South Africa? So again, just to clarify, the measurement services will not be provided by a contract with the IAB South Africa, so that's correct. The IAB South Africa will appoint via deed of endorsement a preferred measurement partner that the IAB will promote to its member base for the provision of the services to those members. And what we can share with you is an example or draft of this deed of endorsement that we will have with the successful vendor. The next question was the tag test. Can you share more details on how many publishers would be part of this test? So at most, what we're thinking of is at most 2 publishers and up to 5 websites will be included in the tag testing. The next question was then on the contract period. The contract start date is April 2022. Is the contract period only until April 2024? Is there an option to put in a proposal for a 3, 4, or 5-year option? The reason for this is that it can benefit the overall financial for subscribers. So of course, the current scope is covered by a contract for a 3-year period. And that's typically what we would be looking at reviewing as well. So it's important that any submissions that are made do include a 3-year contract period or proposal for a 3-year contract period as a baseline. But with that being said, we're open to seeing and reviewing proposals that include options for longer contract periods as well, as long as there is that 3-year period built in as a baseline. Please provide an annual total budget for this measurement project. Okay, so to answer this question, I think again, referencing what I had said just now, we know that the measurement services for this, the scope is not going to be through contract with the IAB South Africa directly, and that there will be a preferred vendor, preferred supplier for these services that will be appointed by the IAB, promoted to its members, like I mentioned just now. Because of that, there's not necessarily an annual budget that sits with the IAB South Africa for this scope. So it's not very easy to give you an indication of that. But we believe that by giving you a sense of the scale of the membership that we have across our member base, that should be sufficient to help you understand what sort of scope and scale there is for billing on this project. How many markets will this cover? The answer is South Africa only. We're only looking at South Africa at this stage. Then there were a set of questions that were related to some technology related questions, particularly around some of the Google tools and the Google marketing platform. I think all of them really we've answered sort of in one go, because I think the answer to all of them is quite similar. So the questions are things like indicate if you have a roadmap to move from Universal Analytics to GA4, describe your current technology architecture, do you have a GA360 license, etc. I think to answer this question, it sort of is more of a clarification with regards to what we're looking for as well. So IAB South Africa doesn't currently hold the license to any Google tools. And wouldn't be responsible for licensing such tools, any analytics tools, for the tracking of website traffic on, member sites. So this is not something that we currently sort of engage in. If a tenderer feels that the Google suite of tools or any similar analytics tools, would be preferable or recommended and appropriate for the provision of the services that we're looking for, then we're open to receiving proposals on the same, but we don't actually have a baseline of this that exists today. as the IAB South Africa, if that makes sense. The next question then was to define measurement currency. I mentioned this a little bit earlier as well, when I think the first sort of objective of us doing this tender is really to give us a measurement currency. So in our minds, a measurement currency is an industry-wide agreement on the value of digital advertising placements based on the size and quality of the audience that such placement would reach. And this would be used as a basis for planning, comparison, and trading as well. The next question, please could you provide all necessary billing information? How many non-member sites would need separate billing? And the answer to this is quite simple. So billing will only be required for IAB members. Great. So at this stage, we'll open the floor for any questions or I guess further clarification on any of the answers that have been provided thus far.
Thank you, Imran. Currently, we don't have any questions that I can see in the chat. So if anyone would like to just turn on their microphone and ask a question, the floor is open. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi, Alan.
Hey, I've got quite a few questions, but so in terms of reach and frequency, in terms of measuring it across other channels other than digital, so like radio and TV and all that sort of thing, is that of interest? Because obviously, in terms of Ipsos, our products are sort of cross-media measurements, so we do radio, TV, and all that. So is that of interest? Obviously, connected TV and things like that are delivered digitally now. So would that be of interest as well in this?
Yeah, I think it's not technically part of the scope, right?
Okay.
I mean, the scope is very specifically digital,
okay.
and that's what we as the IAB would be looking for. You mentioned connected TV, and those were that was one of the sort of device type / emerging channels that we identified as well. So I think it's good that you're thinking in that space. I think the answer to your question is of course I think it would be of value. It's just not necessarily part of the scope of this tender.
Yeah. Can I ask another question?
Of course, go for it.
Yeah, the walled gardens obviously don't allow tagging too much. So in a lot of the cases, we do server-to-server integrations with them. So Google, TikTok, LinkedIn, all those. Will they be included in this?
Yeah, we certainly are looking to broaden the scope of what we're able to measure in this round of the tender. So in previous iterations, that sort of was there and then not there. Definitely going forward, the need is there, and that's something that we clarified through our survey. So yeah, short answer to your question is yes, that would be a requirement. In this current iteration of the tender.
So obviously, mostly probably for YouTube or something like that, where you do a server-to-server integration and then sort of calibrate up to the YouTube number potentially. Just thinking out loud.
Yeah, we're open to, I guess, and looking for those sorts of suggestions with regard to how that would be managed and done feasibly.
Okay.
No, yeah. They said location if possible, so we can target specific towns. I know that gender and those stuff.
Sorry.
I'm just going to see where that's coming from. Karabo, are you asking a question? I see you. Were you building on what Alan was asking, or are you in the office?
I think that might have been an error.
I have another question, if you don't mind.
Shoot.
So obviously, as you said, third-party cookies dying, potentially tagging being an issue. A single source panel will probably be required or some sort of universal ID that can be sort of implemented across all the publishers. So I'm guessing this part of this whole thing, as you mentioned up front, is a sort of a future-proofing technology or solution as part of this. Sorry, I haven't read all the documents yet, but I'm guessing that's probably high on the agenda as well. Because I mean, you might not be able to tag publishers, 18 months from now. So
for sure. Yeah, definitely. It's something that we are looking for some sort of thoughts on and some plans on as well. So that's definitely requested as part of the RFP submission. And we're looking for a solution that, yeah, as you say, would be future-proof to some degree.
Would you be open to passive metering as well? So like a panelist who installs some software on their device, and that device tracks whatever they do. So, and obviously being single source, you can then dedupe usage and sort of get proper reach and frequency rather than just unique browsers and page views and things like that. So I think at the moment we provide the radio sort of market a passive metering app, and it can also listen for TV and radio sort of advertising. But I know this is not advertising, this is content. So I'm guessing that sort of solution is open to that as well. So
yes, for sure. Yeah,
okay.
I think at this stage we're not necessarily sort of. I think any solution that can deliver on what we've outlined in the scope, and we've tried to be as sort of broad strokes as possible with regards to outlining that.
Okay.
We're open to. I think yeah, we're really looking for the sort of new and different here. I guess.
Okay, cool.
Alan, I don't know if you've got another question. Otherwise, I think Caroline from GfK, you had your video on.
Yeah.
Thanks. Hi.
Hi. Just a sort of detailed clarification question about the start date, because so you say April to sort of award the contract or do the legal stuff. But you also envisage that would be the start date of the service as well?
So there may need to be, of course, a transition period, like a handover period. I guess it would all depend. It would depend on what we're agreeing to, what's new and what's different and what changes. I believe that there is a question in the document that sort of asks for clarification on what would be required with regards to transition and handover from your side, should you be successful. So yeah, we're not necessarily saying that there would be a sort of start in measurement from April. If there would be a need for a transition period, we could build that in.
Okay, great.
Another question, sorry if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Is the idea to make the audiences actionable through sort of the programmatic, so like being able to plug it into a DMP and push it out to DSPs, so so those audiences could be bought sort of in the programmatic space, or is it just measurement? Because at the moment there's obviously a lot of sort of requests around enrichment, so sort of data enrichment. So publishers and brands are saying, hey, can you give us this data to enrich our own CDPs? So is it, I think it was clear that it was just that sort of measurement, but not being able to activate against those audiences.
Yeah, so I think similar to the way I answered the first question you had, I think there would definitely be value in that, particularly for some of the stakeholders in the supply chain. I think all of the stakeholders in the supply chain would see value in that. It's not technically part of the scope of this tender, but if that's a bolt-on service or bolt-on sort of functionality that can be added, like I said, there definitely would be value that would be seen in that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Alan and Imran, if I can add, I think what would be important for us is to be able to understand what the scope affords, so that we can assist, in that process when we get there. And then if that service was additional or could happen at a later date, or if it was affordable, I think that's where we need to be able to have those discussions and to enable this, as opposed to one lump fee and then we can't work with you, or
which are like bolt-on sort of things.
Right.
Okay.
And that's beyond scope, but yes. It's
also, I mean, in the UK here, the sort of the requirements being, instead of sort of have rankings, you have an audience first. So as an agency planner, you say, okay, I'm looking for a 65-year-old who earns blah blah blah, who likes blue, and then it spits out a list of sites with sort of indices against those, rather than sort of what we're finding is agencies don't want rankings really. They'd rather find the audience first and then have the sites spat out the other side. I'm guessing that might obviously be something you might be interested in as well. I don't know. Or just rankings, sort of just ranking. You just want rankings.
Right. Well, I think. So I go, Imran.
Well, yeah, I think it's great that you're thinking about the different use cases for the different stakeholders. I mean, I think the way I'd like to answer your question is, certainly, I think the successful tenderers will have a very good understanding of the use cases for the different stakeholders and be able to deliver against that, because one of the other objectives that you'll recall we went through earlier was having something that delivers value for all stakeholders. And I think that's a very clear outcome from this process as well.
Yeah. The buy side, making sure the buy side's involved.
Are there any questions, or I can go back to one of the previous slides if anyone would like to review one of the slides and ask a question on something that was presented or one of the questions that were given to us in preparation.
Apps, SDKs and in apps, is that also part of the scope, I'm guessing?
Apps would be included.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. I'll have more, but I'll send them by email, I think.
Yes, anyone is more than welcome to share questions, and then we'll make sure that as part of the process, in full transparency, that those answers will then be shared with any other participating companies, if you would like to see them. Then Imran, maybe just to go back to our timeline. Yeah, I think thank you to everyone today for your time. Imran, I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to add before we just kind of summarize next steps.
No, yeah, I think we've covered off everything. Agree. Thanks very much for the time, everyone, and we're really looking forward to seeing some great proposals.
Fantastic. Yeah. So please do share your questions. Please do use the RFI, the measurement RFI email address. We'll make sure that goes to the committee, and then we'll collate questions and batch them and then send them off to the participants. And then we'll be sharing this recording and the presentation today. Thank you, everyone. I see someone's in the chat. I don't know if they're just saying goodbye or if they're asking. Oh, just saying thank you.
Caroline, just saying thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a good.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.